Welcome to day 1712 of What's Shipped to Now. Sharon Horne-Ellstrom here. We'll cross that bridge when we come to it. Life framework review. Those are the things we were talking about today in the piece of content that I created. I like to hop on every day and document and share my business journey as I originally transitioned from the brick and mortar corporate world of business over a quarter century, 25 years plus in corporate America, while simultaneously running different businesses and growing different businesses on the side. Learned it from my dad. And I'm super duper grateful that I did, because it gave me a competitive advantage and a psychological and actual monetary buffer compared to other people as I was growing my corporate career, which allowed me to take risks and do things that other people wouldn't even consider, because I had that buffer of a business on the side, so that if I lost my job or if I made a huge mistake and had to reshuffle or change jobs or whatever, I had something to fall back on. I wasn't going to starve or be homeless, right? So in 2017, following my divorce, I was looking for something new to do. I was old enough to retire, but I didn't really want to retire yet, because I didn't think I was that old, and I still had energy and things that I wanted to do with my life. So after we finally settled everything in the divorce, which took a long time, we had lots of businesses and things together, I found myself in a position to say, okay, well, what do I want to do with my life? What have I always been curious about? What am I going to look into? And so that's when I came online and started to learn about the online world and how much easier some things are online and how much harder they are in terms of facing our false beliefs, facing ourselves, growing as a person to get over some of the things that have been holding us back. Because the barriers to entry, the barriers to different things are pretty much made up in our mind, not in whether we can actually do something or not. So today, for our annual challenge, the BU 365-day challenge, to do one thing every day that improves us, we're talking about and taking a breather as we've just finished the 9-area framework. We spent a month focused on each one of these areas. And today what we're doing is we're looking at those areas and we're saying, okay, earlier in the year, in the beginning of the year, I believe the beginning of January, we prioritize these areas: physical, mental, emotional, spiritual, financial, relationships, contribution, communication, and confidence. And we said, on a scale of 1 to 9, number 1 being the most important, what is the most important area of my life right now? What is my highest priority? For a lot of us, it's our physical health, our physical well-being, especially at the beginning of a new year, or it's our mental health. You know, coming out of COVID, a lot of us have had to face things that we've never had to face before. You know, millions and millions of people were out of work that have never been out of work before. Millions and millions of people, billions, were quarantined or, you know, separated from other human beings, many of which had never actually been separated from other human beings before, or in close proximity with just their family members and no one else. So a lot of changes in a lot of different areas and aspects of our life that were affected. So we did that at the beginning of the year. Now we're looking at those areas again today and saying, okay, now October 1st, it's October 1st when I'm sharing, what is my number 1 priority? Physical, mental, emotional, spiritual, financial, relationships, contribution, confidence, or communication. What is most important to me? What do I need to pay attention to right now? And then we're also looking at each of these areas, and we're rating them on a scale of 1 to 10. 1 being, whoa, I really stink. I need a lot. I'm totally out of physical shape. I, am 1 happy meal away from a heart attack, whatever it might be. Or I am in the best physical shape of my entire life. So 1 to 10, 1 being horrible, 10 being awesome. And we're just going to, and this is, of course, a subjective thing. It's how do I feel and how do I think and how do I see this area and aspect of my life right now, today, October 1st, just as a snapshot. And then I am going to, of course, go back and compare, since I keep everything in my little challenge notebook. I'm going to go back and say, after I do this exercise today, what was my prioritization at the beginning of the year? And then I'm going to go through each month and find where we ranked this area and aspect of our life and see what it was at the beginning of the month, and then how I feel about that area and aspect now. Now, some of those areas I have been working on because I put some automatic things in place since I first covered those, or since we first covered those as part of the challenge. And so I'm hoping, not sure exactly, which is why we want to do it, that my ranking will actually show a number improvement based on how I rated it originally at the beginning of the month before we worked on it. may or may not. Sometimes they go up, sometimes they go down. Sometimes I'm having a bad day. Like if I didn't feel good today, I would think that my physical rating, 1 to 10, would be less than normal, and so it could be less than I happen to rate it in the beginning of the year. So, don't know yet. We'll have to go back and do that. But first I have to rank and rate, or prioritize and rate, and then I'll go back and check that. So our idiom for Supersize Your Business today was, we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. I actually really like this expression in this idiom. It's been around since 1851. Henry Wadsworth Longfellow used it in something called the Golden Legend or something. I could be having that wrong, and I can't see my notes, but I think that's what it was called. And it basically reminds me and us to not create more problems for ourselves than are going to come our way. Guess what? Life is going to dish us out plenty of problems, plenty of challenges. Think COVID-19. Anybody anticipate that bugger coming down the road? I certainly didn't. And so I talked about and shared a couple stories about how I used to lose sleep at night worrying about different areas and aspects of my business, audits, cash flow, growth, especially during times of growth. Cash flow would be a challenge depending on the business, but things that used to keep me up at night that I used to lose sleep over. And I realized at some point, and it took me a long time, it wasn't something that just happened overnight. I wish it was, and I had a story about that, but it was something that happened over time as I realized doubt, worry, fear, losing sleep at night felt really, really bad for me and was really, really bad for me. And I realized that when I was feeling that way, it's because I was focusing on the problem. I was focusing on what was wrong, not what I was going to do about it or solutions. And as soon as I was able, and even nowadays, things come up all the time. And as soon as I'm able to flip the switch from problem focus to solution focus, everything clears up and the solution I need appears almost instantaneously now. And at least I'm open to looking for solutions. If I'm still mired in the problem, I can't even see solutions. And I don't think most people can. So I think that's what's scary about what's going on in the world right now and the news media. And it's been pretty much my entire life. I stopped watching the news in the 80s, the mid to late 80s. I don't remember what year exactly, but I was in a training at Procter & Gamble when I was working for them. Great training. Back then it was called Louis Tice training, personal development training. I don't even know if that institute exists anymore, but it was a really awesome training that all of us at Procter & Gamble wanted to go to. I remember I waited a couple of years to be able to be qualified to go to that training, but when I did, it was awesome. And one of the things the facilitators challenged us to do was to give up the news and media. There was no social media back then. I know, hard to believe. But to give up the news not watch it for the entire week. And once I'd gone a week without looking at the news, it became easy to not ever watch it really again. I can count a handful of times where I've watched the news since I made that decision and that choice to give it up. And my family used to tease me about it. How do you know what's going on in the world? And now with the internet, it's impossible to not know what's going on in the world or hear it. And then if it's something I hear that I'm curious about or I want to check into or the source of, then I will go in search of more information on that so I can think and choose for myself. But for the most part, I think I'm much better off for not being inundated with the negative messages that come through the media and social media. Can't imagine how I would feel about my life and myself if I was always online comparing myself to other people or always listening to the negativity of the news, because what we put into our mind is going to have an impact on it whether we believe it or not. It's like the choices of things we choose to watch, listen to, consume has an effect on us. I noticed following my sudden cardiac arrest, for some reason I always disliked scary movies before I had that death event. And then after that, all of a sudden I was very attracted to scary movies and things supernatural. And it didn't have a super negative effect on me, but I found it really fascinating that all of a sudden things that had really bothered me before that event didn't bother me at all anymore. So it's interesting. Our lives are always teaching us lessons if we're open to learning them. A lot of people, sad to say, are not open to learning more. They get to a certain level of personal development or learning. A lot of people when they graduate from high school or when they graduate from college, they think, okay, I'm done. I've got my formal education. I'm awesome. That's all I have to do. And I think that's sad. That's just my opinion, but I think that's sad because I think we need to be lifelong learners of especially ourselves. We need to figure out how to operate ourselves better, how to create the lives that we want. And that's all from becoming a better version of ourselves and getting to know ourselves better. What do we love? What do we not like? What lights us up and makes us excited to participate in the world? What do we want to create? How do we want to have an impact? How do we want to show up in the world? Things like that. Those kind of questions keep me going. All right, any questions, hit me up. I am in the process of a big shuffle and personal move. Probably will not get to doing anything with my work area or my background because I've got so many other areas of my life that I'm working on right now, physically as well as spiritually and emotionally, with respect to different new furniture, moving things. I need a massive decluttering, but that's going to have to wait until the furniture gets moved, etc. So hit me up if I can help you. Otherwise, have an absolutely fantastic day.